A director's perspective on safety. We've had the contractor's perspective, director's perspective. In the overall scheme of things on safety, I don't think the director's perspective on safety is any more valid than anybody else's, whether it be the manager. And certainly if you're looking at a risk assessment about working at a face, I would think that the guy who's operating the machine is a far better person to give you a perspective than me. What I'm going to give you a perspective on is leading on safety and all that goes with that, including all the mistakes that we found along the way, but share with you some of the successes. A disclaimer I would like to add at the beginning as well is that if I do slip into the I word rather than the we, it's inadvertent. The good things that we've done over the years and the things we've learnt and the things that have then built some success are due to always team effort, whether that's me with my boss and my peers or me with the team that was working for me. So, and some of them happily are in the audience today. They would have heard this all before ad nauseam, but at least you can't accuse me of not being consistent. So my objectives today are to share with you experiences on 3 different safety journeys. That's the way I look at my career. So I was MD of Tarmac Central Europe during that period, which was ended up being the biggest bit of tarmac outside the UK. We ended up having 1,600 people. It was largely a quarrying and concrete products business with a little bit of asphalt and a little bit of concrete. The biggest challenge there was the fact that during that period we made 13 acquisitions. And so we had all of that integration issue going on all the time, including businesses that had only ever known working in the communist sector, as well as some private startup businesses. We were obviously part of Anglo-American, and they were setting the tone in terms of their kind of global health and safety objectives. Then Barden Aggregates, Midlands and North, I was a director responsible for those, so that included places like Barden and Croft, as well as small sand and gravel pits out in Cambridgeshire with 3 people in them. And then I moved on to UK Coal Surface Mining, which, if you don't know, runs under quarry regs as well. A very different shape of business in the sense that it's basically a muck shifting business. There's a lot more mobile plant. There's relatively little fixed plant, unlike in a quarry, and that was set in the context of working alongside a bunch of deep miners who have quite a different perspective and quite a different culture on safety. But in each of these places we had success, despite the challenges of the nationalities, language, integration. We were nip and tuck with some of the UK regions in terms of lost time accident statistics. Won a couple of Anglo Global Awards for various things. Barden Aggregates, when Colin Jenkins, president of the IOQ, was my boss leading the charge on safety, we nipped in under him, and Barden Aggregates, Midlands and North managed to taste for certainly the last 18 months I was there, and I believe the 6 months after, we tasted 0. It was a real 0, and it tasted very sweet. And it is possible. UK Coal, never seen a bunch of people work so hard in such a short space of time on safety. We really went for it, and in 18 months halved the LTIFR. At the beginning it was kind of like quarrying 10 years ago in terms of stats. Through just a massive amount of work, we halved that, and we're kind of again in the pack amongst some of the independent quarry operators in terms of LTIFR. So that's not me kind of bigging me up or bigging the team up. I'm just saying there's a kind of a track record that things ultimately worked. We've had all sorts of other things going along the way. We've had runaway trucks. We've had people nicking gas mains with a digger. We've had people maintaining inside vibropresses in concrete products plants, missing out on that much on being crushed by latent energy in hydraulics. So we've had all of that as well, but we had some success on the way. Despite all those variabilities, things are the same the world over. And the things I'm going to share with you follow that. And given I know the ones of you in the audience, I know you're a practical bunch. So rather than giving you a whole load of theory, I'm going to give you a few practical things that I recommend you try if you haven't tried them before, as you think about what else I'm saying. I reckon they're the four, you could do this a load of different ways, 4 different building blocks for having a successful safety record. What I'm going to talk about is the 4th one. I think if you haven't got the first 3, you're going to really struggle with the 4th one. I could do that in the sense that Roy was talking about effective workforce involvement. This is basically about workforce involvement. If you've got effective leadership, you've got effective workforce involvement. I'm going to change that for the Chesterfield. It's kind of occurred to me during this that there is absolutely direct correlation in terms of the quality of your leadership and then the quality of your workforce involvement, which is how we're going to get to 0. All the way along, I'm assuming that safety is a line management responsibility. It's not the safety advisor's responsibility, it's yours. They advise you, and they should push you around a bit like mine did, thankfully. But it's our responsibility, amongst a lot of other things. One of my colleagues, a guy who worked for me, was lucky enough to have dinner one evening with Dennis McGowan. He was one of these guys from DuPont who had all this success in the Maydown plant in Northern Ireland and then started to sell that experience across the sector for a while. They were very present, slightly less so now. And he was very excited about having this dinner. And it then came to the question, so in the normal way that Dennis Wood said, so what do you think, what's the most important thing in your business? And he went, I know the answer to this one. It's safety. Dennis said, no, it's not. That's one of the things. There's quality, there's customer service, there's understanding what your employees are thinking about, and you relegate any one of those at your peril, which is a very interesting perspective. So you're juggling that all the time. If your safety record is rubbish and you need to get it better, then safety will be your major priority. If your business is failing because your quality is crap, then your major priority is going to be on getting your quality right. So that's where I believe it fits. I haven't got anybody to play politics with anymore. Apart from kicking around the house and getting in the way of my wife, who's enjoying me not being around before. But we've all got used to you get kind of where you want to go, and you achieve the things you want to do in a big company. But there's an element of politics. But I just have this personal thing that you just can't play politics with safety. Now, I'm not saying that means you just have to do everything that people above you say. I'm not saying that. And similarly, I'm not saying that you should reject everything that they say and do what you think is right. But you can just take that thought away, and it applies to many different situations. I think you can't make scores, you can't get one over on somebody through safety. I just don't think that's right. Topics that I'm going to run through. These are all going to have one slide on them. And I'll just talk away about what I think, a way of thinking about how we got to where we got to. And at the end of the day, it all comes down to people, this workforce involvement. So fight to keep it simple. It probably applies for a lot of things in life, I would think. I reckon the safety journey is just 1,000 little steps. That's all it is. There are absolutely no silver bullets, none at all, just 1,000 little steps. Keeping it simple doesn't mean it's hard. It's not hard. The old one about, I'm sorry, here's my 40-page report. I didn't have time to write one in 2 pages. Or here's my 60-page guidance note. I didn't have the wherewithal to put it into 4. So keep it simple. Simple doesn't mean dumbing it down. Often it's just clarity that people want. This is one of 5 base rules that we had introduced at UK Coal, and a few little cartoons got the message over loud and clear. I think my tip on this one would be, if you have an incident, and I know this from experience, don't knee-jerk into just doing another procedure, writing more stuff. We had one incident where somebody was at the back of a tractor trying to hitch up the water bowser. And he was kind of leaning up and he fell down and he hurt himself. Now, at the time, the natural reaction was, oh, we need to do a procedure for hitching a bowser onto the back of a tractor. No, it wasn't. He was working at heights because he was standing up on the back of the tractor, and he hadn't isolated because he was putting his hand through the back to try and get the tractor, the drawbar, to engage. Don't write more procedures, you just turn people off. Keep it simple, get to the root cause. On your investigations, it should always be people. If it's, oh, there wasn't a guard there, the guard there wasn't there because somebody didn't do something. Now, the Queen thinks the world smells of paint. And I also know, and maybe it was much more common in the past, a lot of company directors think the world smells of paint as well. Which means that it's not real and honest. And everybody on site knows that. I mean, on the real and honest scale, you get, bear with me for a second, you've got at one end, get the site ready for the boss is coming. People are going to say, this guy doesn't really take safety seriously, it's not real. Through to, on the other end, people fudging safety stats. All of those put you into la-la land and you're lost. So keep it in reality, no matter how painful that might be. Because if you take it away from it being real, the good people will just get off the bus. I've had that feeling where you just feel like you're ever bombarded and you haven't got time to digest the thing that came before. So you get, if you're working for la-la land aggregates, the quality of your investigations is going to be very poor because you're not actually looking for root cause, you're looking for something else. And it's in those kind of moments that facing the reality requires courage. If you're the manager and you actually think that you did something wrong, you've got to be very courageous to say, but you should, because if you don't, then you're not going to get to the root cause or it's going to take you longer to do it. At the same time, I would say if you've been on a good run, don't get complacent. And similarly, if you've had a bad run, but you think you're doing the right things, don't get discouraged either. Keep going. You'll get what you deserve. I had a manager working for me in Barden Aggregates. For the sake of keeping him anonymous, I'll call him Tom Wright. He, those of you know him, he was kind of like in meetings, and he was a late joiner to my team, and I wasn't quite sure whether he was engaging or not. There was obviously some issue, but him and his team had a fantastic safety record. And what I realised was that as I was getting stuff from head office with another thing on safety, another email, great, flick it on, get home. But of course, when it gets to Tom or one of the guys running one of the quarries, they actually have to do something with it. So they had no time to digest it. They were just getting inundated with it, and they were getting off the bus or threatening to get off the bus. So Tom had the courage to say to me, you can't keep doing that. If you're not able to digest all this stuff, take it on board, decide how we're going to implement it, work out what the challenges are, maybe challenge back up again, then how the hell are we going to do it? And so that was a real learning for me. So when I came to UK Coal and we were doing all this work with new standardised procedures, the test for me was that me and my ops manager had to do a test and do a session on each of those new procedures when they came in before we pushed it to anybody else. If we were struggling to deal with it, couldn't find the time, I'm sure as damn it they wouldn't either. So think about that before you just casually flick on an email getting somebody on site to do something, because they've got lots of things to do. Newton's cradle. It's not quite how he said it, but as somebody only with a physics O level, that is, you put in what you get out. And I think that's absolutely true. Now there is a lag. If you take your foot off the pedal or you put your foot down, there is a lag. And I can tell you it's 9 months. Now I'd love to say that that was based on a 3-year programme funded by the EU, working with the Stats Department of Strathclyde University in association with the HSE, but it wasn't. It was based on me sitting in a hotel with my safety manager as we travelled around on sites around the country, that's what we reckon it is. And after 2 pints of black sheep, we're absolutely convinced that our methodology was robust. So it's true, it's exactly 9 months. Chance will play a part in it, but it's only on the timing. You get what you deserve. And I reckon with those stats earlier that we were looking at where the industry's plateaued, the industry has plateaued, and this is my view, and it's on YouTube, is that it's plateaued because the industry has accepted that. The reason that we're stuck on that is because the industry has accepted that. If the industry decides that's not acceptable and only 0 or very close to 0 is acceptable, then they'll get there. I don't believe there's any other reason. Why that is, you can ask yourself, or we have a chat about it later. So you put in energy and passion after exactly 9 months, you'll get something out. Now, if you lead, others will follow, but anybody who has the pleasure of managing people will know it's not quite as simple as that, and they will follow eventually, but I'll talk a bit about that later. My question is, what are your personal values on safety? Can you talk to your mates, and can you be absolutely proud of what you're doing? Does your level of energy that you're putting into safety absolutely match that? Or are you thinking, gosh, I should actually be doing a bit more? In which case, I challenge yourself to go and do it. Because people will notice. Your team will see. Now, quiet corners. These are the bits of the business you can forget. So the obvious one, of course, is that there's more than one dimension to this. Yes, it's the furthest away unit, not the one next to head office, but the one that's out in Cumbria. It's a bloody pain in the neck to get to. There's the Steptoes yard behind the workshops. You've all seen that. I've seen one with 3 old fire engines in it that I was told was all going to be put together into water dust suppression Bowser system, but they'd obviously been there for some time. The infrequent task, the pump man on the Sunday. If you go and have a look on a Sunday, you'll find out that the pump man is checking the pump, but the pump is actually inside the toe bund of the face because it's out of the way and it wouldn't get damaged there. The trouble is he might get damaged in the process. There's a night shift. Generally, I would say they're very pleased to see you because they're the forgotten heroes of things. And I've had a very nice visit to Croft in the middle of the night to see the drilling guys drilling there. They were very pleased to see us. At the same time, concrete products plant in Warsaw, that's the capital of Poland, not the place in the West Midlands, who were all in sleeping bags shortly after we'd acquired them. They weren't quite so happy to see us, but certainly they were safe, but that wasn't it. The other quiet corner is occupational health. What's the stat? Those of you who were at the IOSH conference at Doncaster Racecourse in June or July will know these ones. 12,000 people a year die of occupational related diseases. It's a silent killer. So you need to think about that one. The other one is occupational road risk. That's not occupational road rage, although all of us get that on the way home sometime. How many people died in the sector last year? Was it 170? Something like that.
In the quarry?
No, in the UK.
In
Something about that.
Yeah.
Getting lower. 2,400 people died on the roads last year. Now, the police have looked at that, and 1/3 of those 2,400 people, which is 800 people, were going about doing their job. So that 174 or whatever it is doesn't show the number. There's a huge, huge hidden quiet corner out there. Tip. So you make sure that you do see the quiet corners. Work out all the stuff that goes on daily, quarterly, Sundays, evenings. Schedule it out. And don't, when you go on your trip around your site talking to your people, go to the primary crusher every time at the biggest unit next to the head office. Go to the quiet corners. Make sure you're covering all the ground. You'll get some value out of that. Very much an adage of mine. Sorry, guys, you've heard that 1,000 times before, who know me. It actually came from the Black Panther movement, part of the in the civil rights movement in the US in the 1960s. But it's very much the case with safety. I don't think there is a middle ground. You're either on the bus or you're not. And if you're not, then you're holding things back. So, right, just to wake you up, because you're all thinking about sandwiches at the moment. Right, you might want to shut your eyes, you might, whatever it does to get yourself into a Zen trance. Think about those people in your team or people you work closely with. Who is your biggest safety concern and why? You can probably start, can you kind of think of somebody, the bloke who's maybe the accident waiting to happen, or you probably can. At the other end of the scale, who would you be up the proverbial safety mountain with if you were stuck up there? That person you can absolutely rely on if you're not there to get you through on safety. Now, the other members of your team are going to lie in between that. Start to think about them, because you need to put your priorities where the people are. And as Alan said, sometimes people just haven't got it, and you've got to decide what you need to do. If you're interested, Rob Shaw, who used to be my safety advisor at Barden, now has got his own consultancy. We've got a little spreadsheet that helps you actually understand the culture of your people. If you want a copy of that, it's a very handy, simple one-page tool. You're very welcome to come up and grab one of the copies on a first-come, first-served basis. Take that sheet and do it with your teams. It might take you somewhere. Not magic, none of this stuff is. It's not rocket science. So people, there isn't anything more frustrating or joyous than working with the people in your team. You're obviously looking for all of those things. You don't necessarily always get it. But that's what you're looking for. Now listen to people. There's always that thing about, make sure that you talk to the quiet person, because they might not be the pushy one in the canteen talk, but make sure you do. But on the other hand, some of the best people that I've seen who have a commitment to safety are the gobby ones as well. So make sure you can find a way of working with them and understanding what they've got to say. I had one of them at UK Coal, known as the Honey Monster. Gobbiest bloke I've come across in my career, but had a real heart on safety. And use your intuition, for goodness sake. Probably if you're feeling a bit worried about them, you're probably right to feel a bit worried about them. You should try and work out, why am I feeling worried about that person? Take somebody else's opinion. At some point, discipline does play a part. You do your investigation. Somebody did something wrong. But, and this is where you get into trust in leadership, this is a key moment when you pass judgment on what you want to do with your internal disciplinary procedure. It will send shockwaves through the business. And they're the things that I found most difficult in my career to do, because it's never simply black and white. So think very hard about it. Are you too hard? Are you too soft? I would say the key underlying message for me is that, and you get loads of pressure from above you if you're in a position like me, well, we've got to make a point of this one. And I would say the sanction has to be related to the degree of rule breaking, assuming you're clear on your rules, because a lot of companies aren't, rather than how much somebody got hurt or how much somebody above wants to make an example of somebody. Because if you get it wrong and you get it wrong too often, everybody will get off the bus because they don't trust you. So it comes down to people. That's you and your workforce and how you engage. And it's a cat's cradle in the middle because they're all different. You've just got to find your way through. I think a forgotten art, particularly in our industry, is about asking questions. People don't do that much. People tend to be more on transmit than they do on receive. And when you do ask the question to gain understanding rather than to ask the question to hear what you think you're going to hear or just to give yourself a chance to take a breath so you can tell them something else. Actually listen, learn how to listen, think about it. Can you ask another question before you start making statements? Can you ask 6 questions of somebody in a workshop before you start telling them something? You get a whole lot more out. So we went through those, and it comes down to people. And as I say, I think this is basically, for me, it kind of came to me in a bit of clarity putting this presentation together, that this workforce involvement thing, that effective workforce involvement, the HSE particularly over the last 2 or 3 years have been bashing on about, it basically just comes down to, have you got effective leadership in your business? And can you get leadership amongst your team? You can't lead everybody. You've got to get, it's like a slush puppy, you've got to get your direct reports to then lead their direct reports, and eventually you'll get to the guys at the bottom. Thank you very much.